Okay, in the last lesson, we worked with defining a class which incorporated 4 instance variables, a name, and 3 integers which corresponded to test scores. We had a constructor method, and we also had accessor and mutator methods. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to use that class file in conjunction with another file that will utilize the class that you've defined. We're going to create a new project in JCreator. We're going to call this project student app, and this is on page 202 in the textbook. We're going to write there, next, and finish. And we are going to overwrite because I already ran through this once, and hit finish. Okay, here is the studentapp.java file. Let me get the curly braces lined up like I like them, and we will get to work on creating this file that that is going to utilize the student class that we have already created. We're going to do import Java utility scanner. This will allow us to use the scanner class, which is already defined, and you'll notice that we have public static void main. When we hit run, this will actually be the method that runs. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to instantiate the students. There's going to be 2 student objects and a keyboard object, which will allow us to accept input from the keyboard. Okay, when we instantiate an object, we start with the reference, which in this case is going to be the class name, and then we're going to give it an object name. This is the name of the constructor method that we're going to use from this class. Okay, we're going to create a second student. And we are going to create a scanner object. We're going to call that object reader. And this statement will allow us to use a reader object that accepts input from the keyboard. We're also going to declare 2 variables. One is a name, and the second is an integer called score. Now to input the first student's data. Okay, the first student, let's start with a prompt. Okay, the name is going to be entered at the keyboard, and then the name is going to be set or stored in this variable right here. We're going to call a method from student1 called setName, and then pass the name that we've just entered into that method. The next thing we're going to do is set up a for loop, which will execute 3 times. Since there are 3 test scores, braces for the body of that for loop. Start with a excuse me, prompt, and then we are going to enter a score. going to set the score using the value of the loop and the score itself. Okay, after that's done, we are going to do is to consume the trailing new line character. Let's document that. And now we will input the second student's data. Basically, it's going to be exactly the same code, and we just change where it says first, we change it to second. Where it says student 1, we change it to student 2. Okay, since student 1 and student 2 are objects of the same class, they're going to have the exact same instance variables. They're going to have the exact same methods. So if you can understand it for one object, student 1, you can understand it and utilize it for student 2. Alright, now what we're going to do is we are going to output the two students' information. This is going to be really simple. You do system out println student 1, and then system out println student 2. And I'm going to go ahead and add a new line character in there just to space that out just a little bit in the terminal window. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is output the student with the highest score. If student 1 get high score, and that's going to be a method that's defined within the student class, which determines the high score out of the 3 scores contained within each student object is higher than the high score for student 2. What we will do is transfer student 1's name into the name variable. And then if that's not true, what we'll do is we will transfer student 2's information into those variables. And it's important to remember that name and score are variables that are defined within student app. They are not variables that are defined within student job, just the student class. So just to make sure that we know what name and score are, and then we will print out system out println. Let's see, name has the highest score, which is the score. And I'm going to add a new line character like so. And then we're going to output the student with the highest average score. It's basically going to be the exact same logic, but instead of getting high score, we're going to use get average. basically the same thing. Let's see. This is going to say the highest average score. And make sure we've got a semicolon right there. Looks like our brackets are lining up properly. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to compile this. The process is complete. Make sure the student is compiled properly. And then let's run this. Here is the second student's name. Here's the toString which summarizes student 1, and the toString which summarizes student 2. Mark has the highest score of 100. He also has the highest average. Press the Alt key to continue. And that is what that looks like. You can see that the student app file utilizes two student objects, student 1 and student 2. Set name, set score. Let's see, there's set name again, set score, get name, get high score, get average. All of those are utilized properly and it runs properly. Again, just as a quick review, this is the class that we defined. The instance variables are defined first, and they have a visibility modifier of private, which means they're not going to be seen outside of the class. Okay, we have to use the methods that we defined down below to get at the information located in those variables. This is your constructor method. We just have one constructor method utilized here. It's with an empty parameter list. Any student that is instantiated will have an initial value of a blank string or an empty string right here, and zeros for the test scores. And this is called the no args constructor, meaning that no arguments are passed in, and that's how that works. We use a mutator method. Mutator methods generally are void, meaning they don't have information flowing out of them. Their jobs are to change the values of the instance variables. And here's our second mutator method, which sets the test score. Here's an accessor method, getName, which we utilized in student app. All it does is return the value that's located within the name instance variable. We use getAverage, this function right here, which has a local variable which only exists within this method, and it returns that out. Here's your method to obtain the high score, and here's toString. toString will be used to define how the method is printed when it's printed. This particular toString has a local variable called str, which is of type string, and then it returns the value. What we have is the name, test1, test2, and test3, and the average score, like so. And that is a basic way that works. Student app utilizing the student class that we created earlier.